A pivot chart is like a regular chart, but the difference being is that you get these little drop-down filter arrows that you can filter or pivot in and out of your source data. In other words, you can pick and choose what type of data you want to see in your pivot chart with just a click of a drop-down arrow. And there are two ways you can create your pivot charts. One way is if you already have a pivot table created, you can just base it upon that pivot table by clicking anywhere within the pivot table, coming up here on its related contextual options tab, go to the Tools group, click on Pivot Chart, double click on any one of these charts, line, pie. I'm going to do column, and there you go. And it's related in that we have the same fields, duplicating them off of our pivot table, salesperson date, sum of quantity, and then the other filters for company and product. So you can go ahead and click on the drop down arrow and say, I don't want to see all of them, I just want to see one of them, and then click OK. Bob Appelman. What you do in one affects the other and vice versa. So if I come up here in the pivot table and select all again, click OK, we're back to where we started. And then if you need to resize your chart, be able to add those value Y labels or category X access labels, you want to watch my training videos on creating and modifying charts. I go over all of it. The only thing that you want to learn here, or that's different between the pivot charts and regular charts, are the filter fields, which we know how to do. Just click on the drop down arrow. The sum of the quantity isn't a filter, it's telling you what you're viewing down below, the total of the quantity or the addition of the quantity. If you want to go ahead and change it, well, sum of quantity, you can do it here or over here in the pivot table. Click on the drop down arrow, click on value field settings, do it there as we went over in the previous training video, or on the chart. Let me click cancel, right click, and there it is again, value field settings. And then go ahead and choose one of them, like maybe we want the average, click okie dokie. So now we get the average quantity of everything that's been sold for, well, fort tents, tiki torches, lanterns, and so on. And then I don't know if you can see it, but the companies down below, they're kind of all jumbled, so you may have to stretch open your chart. You see them much better there. Table, you can easily see them, the company and the products they purchased or that we sold to that company. And then the other way, if you don't have a pivot table and you're starting from scratch and you don't want a pivot table, you want a pivot chart, well, go back to your worksheet that contains your database, click anywhere within it, and then come up here, click on the Insert tab, go to the Tables group, click on the Pivot Table drop-down arrow, and there's Pivot Chart. Then it'll ask you two questions. First of all, where's your database? And make sure you have it selected. If you don't see the marching ants around it, then go ahead and click on your collapsible dialog box button, and then click and drag and select the entire database, and then hit Enter to pop back open the window. The second question is, where do you want to dump this pivot chart into? A new worksheet or an existing worksheet? I'm going to say New and click Okie dokie. Now you'll notice we've got the pivot chart that we can go ahead and build up, but the pivot chart is not without the pivot table. So just think of it as your little brother that cannot leave you alone. It creates them together. I mean, you could move the pivot chart to another table, as we went over when it comes to modifying charts in a previous training video, but in any case, they put them together when we start off. So to go ahead and start building up our pivot chart, just like building up or starting out and adding flesh to our pivot table, as you recall in our creating a pivot table, just come over here and check the fields that you would like to see in your pivot chart. Right now we don't have any values, we just have filtering options or row labels. We have the company that we sold to, who sold the products to the company, our employees here. Of course we can drag that around down at the bottom so we can have the salesperson and then the companies below each salesperson that they've sold to. Then we can go ahead and click and drag quantity to values. So the quantity of the product, well, what's the product? We can click and drag that to the report filters. So if we want to say, click on the drop down arrow, let me go ahead and check so we can get multiple selections, uncheck them all and say air mattress and click OK. Well, for the product air mattress, our salesperson Homer Simpson is the only one who sold air mattresses, and to who? Which company? Scouting Sports. In any case, let me go ahead and go back to options, the tab here, click on clear, and we want to clear the filters. And then you can click and drag and move your pivot chart, or right click on the pivot chart and say you want to move the chart to a new worksheet, click okie dokie. And what you do here when it comes to filtering, like I said, if we want to filter the products and uncheck them all and maybe do two of them and click OK, what you do in one, when you go back to your worksheet that used to have the pivot chart and the pivot table. Now you just have the pivot table because we moved that pivot chart over here to its own worksheet. So what you do in one, again, updates in the other. Even though this one has its own worksheet, they're still linked. And then up here where it has the total, you can select it, triple click, or click and drag to select the text within it, and then type in a title for your chart.
Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel, get notified of the latest videos, and for only $2 a month, you can have access to all my Microsoft Office training videos.